What's up, guys? It is JZNES back again with another video. Today, we're talking Silent Hill, the granddaddy of all survival horror games there. Oh, wait, isn't that Resident Evil? Well, this is the one that did it better. Resident Evil wasn't that scary, like, let's be real. The zombies, kind of, if you were a kid, that was kind of scary, but like, I'll tell you the game that really freaked me out as a kid was Silent Hill. And I'm pretty sure I've told this before. If not, this might be an exclusive, but I gotta have said that in the Resident Evil video, right? Maybe I just wasn't thinking about it, but I used to watch my brother play games all the time. I must have mentioned it in the Metal Gear video as well, because I used to want to watch him play that one. He never let me watch him play that one until maybe later. No, I don't think I ever really got to watch him play Metal Gear. But I'd like sneak in there and pretend that I was like asleep or whatever, because we shared the same room. So what ended up would be happening, he'd be playing all these scary ass games, you know, all these like mature rated or teen rated games, all the Resident Evils and Silent Hill and whatnot. I wasn't supposed to be watching, but I did anyway. And one of the ones that freaked me out the most was Silent Hill. I just have these vague memories of it, like scaring the living shit out of me, because it's a pretty terrifying game. Now, by today's standards, maybe if you're playing it in the light and you're playing it with a bunch of friends, it's really not that bad. But it's like, dude, if you play this shit in the dark, just like it was intended, just, you know, it's dead of night, in the dark, you're all home alone, you know, playing it like that, that's the way to do it. You're in your basement, you know, that's only you down there, and you can't hear anything else, you know. That's how I used to play it at my mom's place. Actually, funny story, one time when I was playing this at my mom's place, something really creepy happened. Something fell on the other side of the basement, and it scared the shit out of me, because it was like, it felt like it was in the game or whatever, and I just heard something fall in the game, too, or like, the game make a noise as well. So it was like really freaky shit. I like turned off the game and like stopped playing at that point, because I was like, oh god, like what have I like summoned to come and knock this thing over in my basement or whatever. That's the kind of fear this game instills, man. Like, whew, you know, like that kind of shit. You play this in the dead of night, you're gonna get fucking scared, because this game is scary as shit. And for PS1, I still consider this game probably the scariest game, or just like the most atmospherically horror-centric game. I haven't played games like the Fatal Frame games. I'm too chicken to do that, but I hear those games are pretty scary. But aside from like that, I can't really imagine like what else would give me like genuine fear. Because, like, most horror games or survival horror games are just action games these days, or they go for the gore shit, which is like, whatever, that's nothing. This game is about genuine scares, genuine atmosphere, genuine everything. This is the real shit right here, as far as I'm concerned. Now, this is all, of course, my opinion, but I think that the game still holds up remarkably well, and still is extremely scary to this day if you play it in the right context. Like, for myself, it's daytime, you know, which is more tolerable. I should have really done this at night, but there's really no way I can do that at night with my schedule or whatever. But, because that's the way it's meant to be played, genuinely, terrifyingly, in the dead of night, with all the lights out, and it's pitch black, and all you can see is your TV screen in front of you, you know, getting that horror experience. But yeah, so, but I played it, you know, just no videos on the side, none of that, just, fully focused, and I feel like a lot of times when I play games, I'll watch videos on the side and whatnot, even when I'm playing a new game, just like whatever. But this is a kind of game that demands your attention and really wants you to be immersed in that atmosphere. So I wanted to give it the full effect of that. Just like I used to do back in the day, you know, really focus in on that. And that worked out really well for me. So because the game is still, like I said, really terrifying as is. It's still, I consider, to be the scariest game, to me anyway, and maybe that's, a lot of that is traumatic childhood memories flooding back, but I don't even think it's that, because I don't even remember much about the game. The one thing I remember about the game from when I was a kid is running around in the library room at the school, because my brother handed me the controller one time, and I didn't know how the fuck to shoot or do anything, um, and yeah, so that was the only thing I remember about the game, is that section vividly from when I was a kid. Um, Everything else is a blur to me, because I don't know, I never got to like really feel like the place I was in that game, because it just changes so much, and the atmosphere really diversifies itself, and you're always running around in different environments that look really similar, especially when you get to the other world. But um, for a PS1 game, it actually is kind of um, very well done. How many different sort of settings there are. It's all an urban sort of setting, but they definitely use it to their advantage. Even the stuff that they have to reuse is just like really reused super well. Like you'll go through different parts of the game. Like there's the elementary school, then there's like, they're almost dungeons, I would call them, like almost like in Resident Evil when you go to the guardhouse, like, or the mansion. It's like they're different sections of the game, but like it's like that. They're kind of, but they're longer than that. I would say sometimes not. Um, like the final one, Nowhere is what it's called. Like I remember that being a lot longer than it was. Of course, I was following a guide this time around. It made it really, really like pure gas, because I got through that in less than an hour, probably like 30, 40 minutes, which, like, used to take me hours to get through that. So, I mean, I did the whole game in 5 hours and 9 minutes. I mean, that's pretty good for not having played it in a while. Um, but anyway, so all of these areas that you go to, and even like just like all these little random like places you go, like the church, and like you go to like this I don't even remember what it is, but it's just like this little antique shop, that's what it's called, at one point, and they reuse that as a room in Nowhere in the final part. So that's my point, is they reused a lot of assets there, and I think that's really cool. um, they reuse like most of the hospital. That's kind of like the main setting for it. But they like move stuff around, and like you go in one door and it'll be like a whole floor of the hospital or whatever. That part is really cool, just because it's like a trial run of like everything that you've seen up until this point, and then they like even add in stuff from there that like was unresolved, like in the when you go to the hospital and you're in the other world in the hospital the first time. There's a panel that uh, you can't really do anything with, but it says like, oh, like it's mounted to the wall or whatever, and it's like, it looks like it can be unscrewed or whatever, but you don't have a screwdriver, so you're like, all right, whatever. So then at the end of the game, when you're back there again, you get to go and get a screwdriver and take that out, so that's pretty cool. Um, so stuff like that is neat. Reusing the assets and whatnot, like I was saying, is just really well done. But they don't really reuse a lot of assets all the time. They just do that in a really clever way. Another clever thing that they do, and one of the defining things of this game, is the fog, as you can see kind of on the guide there, which, by the way, got this guide for $4. And apparently the retail suggested price was only fucking $13. That's a goddamn steal for this guide, because it's like really helpful. And I have the third game too here, by the way, which is the only other one I own physically, other than the original game. And I actually had this third game for a while now. I got this physical game a few years ago for like $20 at Disc Replay, and it was a really, really good deal, because it's in really nice shape there. So yeah. So I'm really happy to have that. I've really just played it physically, not physically. I played it digitally on my PSN all these years. I originally played the game back in like high school, so it was like 2008 or 9 or something like that. Uh, maybe even before that. I don't know. It must have been high school at least. I know it was at least high school. It might have been middle school. I don't know. But 2008 or 9, that sounds about right. Maybe 2007 even. But I remember playing it back then, and it just freaked the shit out of me back then. And I'm like, this is definitely the scare, because that's exactly that, around that time, right before that was actually when I had played Resident Evil as well, and I was expecting that game to be scary, and it wasn't scary at all. And then I'm like, huh, like what happened? And then I'm like, I played Silent Hill, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was the scary one that traumatized me as a kid, not Resident Evil. Even though I remember Resident Evil being kind of scary, but um, yeah, it was Silent Hill for sure. That's the one that scared me. And then back then, I was super scared of it as well. Um, Even being a bit older at that point and a teenager and whatnot, it's still a scary game. It still scares me now. The atmosphere is still friggin' really tense now, you know? Even. Um, so yeah, so I've got quite a history of this game. I like replaying through it a lot because it's just one of those games. There's a lot of replay bonuses too. You can use like extra items you get through beating the game. You get some extra items depending on certain things that you did throughout the playthrough there. Which ending you got? There's like 4 or 5 different endings that you can get. So depending on which one, they'll give you an item or whatnot. And then there's you get this channeling stone if you do like really specific stuff, and then you can like put that at certain points in the game and you can get the UFO ending. So that's pretty cool too. So I like how there's multiple endings and they're all pretty different compared to like Resident Evil's somewhat similar multiple endings. Um, but it's kind of very similar based on like who dies and who lives and whatnot. If Kaufman and Sybil both live, then you kind of get the good ending. If one of them dies, then you get like one of them dies, you get like the regular good ending, and then if both of them die, you get like the bad ending or whatever. So yeah, um, but you have to do a lot of stuff throughout the game. You have to know to go get this empty bottle. This is always the one that screwed me up. Is really early on in the game, right when you get to the hospital. It's the first time you're in the hospital. You have to get an empty bottle, go and scoop up the red stuff that you throw on Sybil later, and that Kaufman throws on the demon at the end of the game. You have to go get that stuff at the beginning of the hospital, because if you don't do it, it's not there later, or you can't get to it later, or whatnot. Um, and you just like screwed yourself out of saving Sybil at that point, because then you just have to kill her if you don't have that. And so yeah, so you have to know to do that, and then you have to know to do this Kaufman side quest to save him, and you have to know to throw the stuff on Sybil rather than just shooting her or whatnot. So it's all this stuff you gotta know in order to get the good plus ending. Um, so yeah, and the game doesn't really hint at it much. These are just kind of little obscure secrets that you have to kind of figure out. Um, but if you're exploring a good amount, if you're kind of finding everything, then you're more than likely to find most of that stuff. I don't know how you would know to throw the thing on Sybil, but I don't know. That's one that maybe would have like taken some time to figure out. And also, by the way, the guide is fucking wrong about that part where you're fighting Sybil. Once you get to the second part, she like latches onto you or whatever because she throws her gun aside because she runs out of ammo. And the guide says, let her latch onto you, then use the thing. If you do that, the thing doesn't work. You have to let her get close to you and then use the thing. And that's the only way to do it. And the guy just fucking lies to you about that. It tells you when she's like wrapped around you, that's when you use it. That's not right at all. So, fuck that. Um, there's like 6 or 7 boss fights in this game. One of them is Sybil, like I just said. There's a lot of like different demons. They're not really that hard. The game is like pretty abundant with ammo if you're like looking around. If you're not looking around that much, you might have some ammo resource issues. But by the end of the game, I had like 66 rifle ammo, which isn't, this is a very uncommon kind of ammo. I had like 100 something shotgun shells and um, like so much handgun ammo coming out my ass that I just used the handgun for the entire game, which I usually use the melee weapons to make it more interesting, but um, and to kind of conserve ammo. And I assume on the harder difficulties that they have to cut that shit down because it's just way too easy otherwise. Like, you'll never run out of ammo. There's no way, you know? Like, it's impossible. Also, I wanted to know what would happen. This is just like a really random little thing, but like, there's the one part where you have to go to the sewers, and right before there, you have to break open this lock. You're not guaranteed to have picked up a melee item, weapon, that is. They're always, like, really obviously in your path. Like, there's an axe that's, like, right next to this little shrine that you see in this room. It's, like, pretty obviously there. You'd probably pick that up. Or this, like, bigger axe that you see in this generator room, like, earlier in the game. Like, that's a pretty obvious one to pick up. Or there's a knife. That's probably, like, one of the more ones that you wouldn't see, is the knife and the diner at the beginning, but I don't even know if that can break the lock. I tried to break the lock with that just to see if it would happen, and it didn't do anything. So maybe that just takes more hits or whatever. So there's that, and then there's like this this pipe, this rusty pipe. I don't remember where you pick that one up, but maybe that one's mandatory. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I wonder what happens if you don't pick any of those up. Do you just like, because the game basically just directs you over there. Is there a way to like break that at that point, or do you have to like backtrack to go find one of those? I don't know. Really random little side note there. Um, but yeah, the boss fights are all really not that hard unless you're playing a harder difficulty. I would say, because I know I did play like normal and maybe even hard. I think it was just normal. I don't think I ever played hard, but I did play normal. Maybe I did play hard because the final boss was like impossible because I had ran out of rifle ammo at one point. I don't remember how I did that because there's so much of it, but like, I don't know. I assume in the harder difficulties it's a lot harder and the bosses probably take a lot more hits. I definitely remember the final boss going down pretty easy here on this playthrough, and that was kind of surprising, but I used to be really shitty at that, dodging the electricity in that fight or whatever. All you gotta do is run. It's really not that hard. Um, I don't know. I guess it wasn't very good. There are tank controls in this game. That's another big criticism of the game. Um, After a little while, though, I just kind of got used to them. I guess I'm just from that era of gaming where that doesn't really bother me. It's not ideal, obviously. It could be a lot better, but it's not that bad. I even used the D-pad instinctively a lot of times, and that worked fine as well. Even though you can use the analog stick, and that's mostly what I use. But I found my hand just going to the D-pad, just because that was more comfortable for me sometimes. So even the D-pad works just fine. So, and all the camera angles and whatnot lend to the horror vibe, you know, much like in Resident Evil. But sometimes they make it harder to like go the way you want to go. It's very rare though. The only time I really experienced that was at the very beginning of the game when you're going down that alley to like where it, like it's all fucked up. You're chasing Cheryl. You're going down that alley, and then like that one, because the camera angles were just like at the strangest way, and that's the only time I really found that it was like super distracting. Otherwise, sometimes it would just like come more towards you, and then you would have to like come towards the camera. Like you would see the front of Harry, and you'd be coming towards the camera. And the room wasn't fully revealed to you, and that was that's you know, not frustrating. That was just a thing that the camera angle would do. So you didn't really know what was ahead of you, but you can know. The brilliant thing about this game is the sound design really sells every aspect of this game. I actually wrote some notes here about the sound design. So Okay, so actually this is all about the sound design here because I just think it's so brilliant. First of all, the music is super tense, and whenever the music comes on, it's not usually on, but whenever it does come on, it's like, oh shit, something's happening, or like, you have this radio that you get at the beginning of the game, and it'll like do this staticky thing whenever an enemy's near, and it'll do like a less staticky thing if an enemy's like far away. So you're always like knowing that an enemy's gonna be there. But even if you don't have that on, like you can hear the enemies like distinctive run or walk or like flying enemies you can hear coming at you. So it's always terrifying to hear these things. And so that's something. But a few little notes I made about the sounds and stuff here. One of them isn't really about that, but it's like when you're holding the controller, if you've been hurt, it'll vibrate if you have the vibrate function on to tell you that you're hurt. Like his heart is beating, So I thought that was cool. And the faster it beats, like the more hurt you are. Like that's really brilliant. I love that. That's such a cool mechanic. Of course, that'll run out the battery on your controller faster, but it's like, wow, like that's fucking cool, And especially back in the day when there was no battery on the controller, just plugged into the thing. If you had vibration, that's such a cool feature. Like that's awesome. Like that's more games should do that. When they don't have the health on the screen, because you have to go to the menu to look at the health. But that's a non-visual way to do that, and that's really cool. So there's this part when you go, most of the game up until that point had been like you hear the static of the radio, or there's the music is really tense. But the second you step into the hospital, it's really quiet, and all you hear is like the whirring of machinery off in the distance, and it's like this really subtle, unsettling sort of atmosphere. Like, what's that? Like, what's that noise? And like, why is it so quiet all of a sudden? Am I gonna get freaked the fuck out? So, so that was the atmosphere you go into there. So I said the sound design, especially in the non-otherworld hospital, so the regular hospital there, quiet yet machinery humming in the distance, eerie, dense, a stark contrast to the outside, chilling in its ambience. Masterfully done. Truly makes the player feel the isolation while keeping the fear. That's the other thing, is outside you're being chased by all these enemies and all this stuff, and you've basically been chased by enemies the whole game up until this point, and then it's just quiet. There are no enemies. It's just you're alone for once, and that's kind of it's that contrast is so isolating, and it keeps the fear in its own right, which is just really cool. So, and then the other thing I love about the hospital is when you go into the elevator and you have to go up all the floors, and you kind of check each floor, and then when you go in after floor 3, there's a fourth button, and then in Japan, in Asian culture, 4 is a really cursed number, much like 13 is for us. So I just thought that's really cool. It's 4, so that already appears as a bad omen, and then you press that, and that's what takes you to the other world. So I think that's really cool. And then even better, it's a fucked up version of the first floor, which which every door on the first floor is accessible except for the double doors. Um, to kind of that was locked or whatever. And then when you get to this floor, all the other doors aren't accessible, and you have to go in the one that was locked on the first floor. So it's like a very mirrored version of that one. So I thought that was really cool. Um, and then there's this. I'll talk about it, I guess, more when I talk about the story. But there's like a drug subplot, like a lot of references to like, oh, these people are on drugs, and that's why like the police force is looking into this. Sybil even mentions this. She's a police officer that you meet in the game. Sybil there. She even mentions the drug thing. You see it in all this like supplementary material, all the like files, like Resident Evil files. Anything you read anywhere is just like always about drugs and whatnot. Kaufman mentions it. Lisa mentions it. Harry thinks like if you do the little side quest with Kaufman, Harry thinks like, oh man, this guy's definitely related to the drug thing in this town. It's like so much references to this drugs that I like didn't remember from when I played this from before. And I think you maybe have to go a little bit out of your way to do that. There's a safe in this place called the Indian Runner, which is like this convenience store, which by the way, they just have the key sitting in a drawer, like, right next to the safe. Like, what the fuck? Like, dumbass? Like, anybody can get into the safe. What's the point of the safe then? But anyway, inside there is drugs. So, there's a whole random drug subplot there I just think is really funny. And, like, it's like a strange alternate, like reasoning for why all the fucked up shit is happening in the town is just like, yeah, just blame it on drugs or whatever. So, but what I was trying to talk about earlier, I got sidetracked. The fog in the game is a really brilliant touch as well, because whenever you're outside, when you're inside, a lot of times it's dark, so you have to have like your little flashlight there. You can turn that off too, but like you don't want to, because you'll be able to see a lot better with it. But when you're outside, there's fog everywhere, and it's kind of a limitation of the system, but also it really adds to the horror aesthetic of the game. And I just think that's so brilliant that they use that limitation of the system as like an aesthetic thing to just, like, you don't know where the enemies are coming from without hearing them, or like you don't have the visual indication until they're right on you. So it's just like that intensifies the horror, and I really like that. Another really great thing that the game does is explorative elements to the game. There's a lot of exploring elements, a lot like Resident Evil, but on a bigger scale, because it's not always linear. I mean, I feel like Resident Evil's pretty linear, and you're always kind of confined to like a house or whatever. The early Resident Evils, this is. Even the later Resident Evils actually didn't have like any very explorative elements, but basically you explore whole sections of the town. Now, there's not always a lot to find. There's like usually a few buildings that you can go into, like the police station and that kind of stuff. They're just like little offshoot areas, but like the first area of town is pretty big, and you actually have to go around to most of it and like kind of map out where all the roads are cut off, and like all the areas that you can go to, because you have to find 3 different keys to open this door in this house that you have to find. So it's like, that's like the whole big first puzzle so that you can get to the elementary school. So that's cool. So there's a lot of exploring just all over that area, like right from the get-go. And each of the dungeons, like that's most of what you're doing. The game has a lot of explorative elements, and they have maps that mark off little things and like note certain things that you find along the way and stuff. It's super helpful, and I really like that exploring element to the game. I think that's really very cool. And it also forces you to explore areas that you don't want to go to, which is a thing that a lot of people have brought up, how it's like, they force you to go to like the morgue, and like you're like, I don't want to go to the morgue in this game, and like the basement, and it's like, that's the one I don't want to go to because it's always fucking creepy down there, but it's like, you gotta go there to finish the game. So yeah, there's that. It just kind of forces you to go into those areas. The comparison made is actually to a horror movie where you're like, don't go in there when you know they're gonna go in there, but the game actually a good horror game forces you to go into that area yourself, and then be scared as shit for doing that. So yeah, that's another element to the game that I really like. The explorative element, and how that also ties into the horror elements, and also how that ties into the item management elements. In Resident Evil, you kind of have less items than you usually want to have, but a lot of people stockpile them, and that's kind of what the flaw of this game is if you're playing, especially on the easier modes, is like there's so much ammo. And if you're really exploring, you're gonna definitely find um, most of that, and you're just gonna be way overstocked on stuff. Is really what it comes down to. So, but that's fine by me. I'd rather. I mean, I don't know. It is tense to not have all the resources that you need all of the time or whatnot, like in Resident Evil. So I think that that's how it would be on the harder difficulty. So if you want that, there you go. But yeah, so item conservation. That's what I was trying to say. Like that's the term I was trying to think of. Basically, yeah. So I like that how that all ties in to the horror. Yeah, the sound design is really brilliant. The atmosphere, I think the graphics are fairly impressive for the PS1 era. A lot of the animations and whatnot are better than, I don't know, stuff like friggin' I can't like that. At least the character models and stuff are better than like Final Fantasy VII's like overworld character models. The ones in battle are fine, but you know like the stuff like that. They have FMV cutscenes that are always look really nice and really well done. I think they were motion captured or whatever. Of course, it's Konami too, so that was another thing I was gonna say. Konami, you know, they were really on fire around this time. This was like what 98 or something like that. So I mean, or maybe this is 97. This come out before Metal Gear. Um, they should be able to tell, right? 99 actually. So this is actually post Metal Gear, but you know, it was Metal Gear and then this game, like that's fucking really excellent. Like, geez, they were just pumping out the hits back then, man. Really freaking awesome game. You know what would have been cool if they would have ported this game to the N64. I would have liked to see that because they ported Resident Evil 2 over there. I feel like they could have done this game. I don't feel like there's a lot of representation for Konami on the 64, was there? Like, I think they made those Goemon games, but it wasn't like a Metal Gear port or nothing. I don't know. Anyway, I'm probably forgetting a few. Oh, they had fucking Castlevania 64, which kind of sucked. They were really mostly all in on the PlayStation there, I feel like. You know, Symphony of the Night, Metal Gear Solid, fucking Silent Hill, you know, shit like that. So, Suikoden, right? That was Konami. Stuff like that. Anyway, point is, Konami was pretty on fire around this time, and this was definitely one of their hits. So graphically, it looks pretty good. I don't feel like it really stutters, like frame rate wise or anything. I think it all plays fine, and I like all the enemy designs and whatnot. They kind of reflect the areas that they're in. So like when you're in the elementary school, there's like little kids with knives or whatever. When you're in the hospital, it's like nurses and doctors and stuff that have like knives. A lot of enemies have knives in this game. When you're outside, it's cool because there's like the flying enemies. Those were pretty typical. Then there's like the dog enemies, and then I wasn't expecting it, but when I got to the next area in front of the police station, there's like this big gorilla guy, and I'm like, what the fuck is that shit? So that really threw me off guard. So yeah, basically, I like the enemy designs. They're all very the theme of the game is like darkness and like hell, and like the town is being enveloped by demons and whatnot. So I think all the demon designs are really cool, and I like that they really nailed that atmosphere and really played that up in the story and whatnot. So let's talk about that, I guess. The story is that you're this guy going after your daughter. You were going to this town. Your car crashed because Alessa went in front of your car or whatever. Also, how does that work? Isn't she like part of Cheryl or whatever? Like I don't know. I don't have the story fully down. The voice acting I want to talk about, I guess, briefly, is kind of cheesy, but it's also really good for the time. Like, it's way better than Resident Evil's voice acting. Like, it actually sounds like they're saying things that make sense, and like the dialogue actually makes sense, and so like the script kind of makes sense. Now that is to an extent because there's like a lot of things that like Dahlia is saying, Dahlia Gillespie, who's like the villain, quote unquote. Um, but she says all this like cryptic bullshit about the end of the world and like the apocalypse and whatever that like is just it's just it's like it's mindless like gibberish. That's what Harry calls it in the game. It's gibberish, but it just sounds like prophecy babble or whatever they call it. So I don't know if that was like all the best translated stuff, but the voice acting is actually pretty good for the time. Like this would definitely be a good representation for voice acting alongside like Mega Man Legends, and I'm trying to think what the other one was that I said was really good voice acting. It might have been Mega Man Legends actually. That probably was what I was thinking of. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of really great voice acting at the time, and that was definitely one of the better ones. Um, so yeah, so that's cool. But anyway, I was talking about the story. So you're after your daughter. She kind of runs off. You meet Sybil at this diner, and you split up, and you meet Dahlia at the church once you've been through the elementary school there. And she kind of tells you about like, hey, this place is fucked up and demons and shit. Like, save the world or save the town or whatever. Um, yeah, and it just keeps kind of going from there. You go to a bunch of different places. You meet this girl Lisa, who ends up just being, I guess, spoilers for Silent Hill. She ends up being like one of. She's just kind of like one of the enemies, but she retains certain memories or whatnot. But she ends up like turning at the end and just like you don't have to like fight her or anything, but like you just it's sad. It's a good moment in the game. Kaufman is just kind of an asshole the whole time, but I like him. He's a funny kind of character. Um, yeah, so you have a bunch of those kind of characters, and you just meet them at random points of the story, and like Harry tries to make sense of like everything that's happening. But what I like is that Harry, the whole time, all his motivation is just to get his daughter back. And I think that's really nice and really sweet. The way the dialogue like goes about saying stuff this sometimes um, sounds really silly, but like at the core of the message of the story, it's a really nice sentiment that this guy is so um, he loves his daughter so much that he is willing to just go through all of this for her, and I think that's really really beautiful and whatnot. Um, Now, and then it's revealed that Cheryl's not even your actual daughter; it's just a daughter that he adopted because they found her, um, or whatnot. But yeah, like that's pretty cool. So yeah. So yeah, the story is good, and I think it's really well done for the era. It's simple, but it works, and it definitely lends to providing the atmosphere for um, for for the game and for the horror. Um, it sets up kind of what you're scared of, all the demons and whatnot there. So yeah, so I like that. I give the story a good thumbs up there. I think they did a good job with that. Aside from some questionable voice acting at times, but the dialogue, like seriously, is like way better than Resident Evil. It actually like makes sense. There's lines in Resident Evil that feel so disjointed from each other that just like, what? What are you saying? Like these dialogues feel like they could happen. Not that they're like this most super realistic dialogue, but it's like for the time, like this is really good dialogue. Is all I'm saying. So yeah, I like that. I just like the characters. I think they're all really well done. Um, they'll serve their purpose well enough. So that's good. I don't know if I talked about. There's like the gameplay is good. I know I talked about the tank controls already, but like the guns and stuff. Like you got your pistol, you've got your shotgun, which is a lot better than pistol. Obviously, it's like probably the best weapon other than the hunting rifle, which is kind of the most powerful weapon and it has the longest longest range as well. So so yeah, like the range of the hunting rifle definitely gives it the advantage over the shotgun. But the shotgun is still really powerful as well. Um, and then there's a bunch of melee weapons too that you can use mostly on the normal enemies, but I think you can probably destroy a few bosses with that. Just kind of depends. A lot of the bosses are like flying or floating or something, so it's kind of be harder to do that. But you probably take on Sybil with like melee weapons if you really wanted to. It's probably pretty dangerous because her gun is like a one hit, like almost kill you kind of attack. But yeah. So I don't know. I just wanted to mention that because those, like I said, you pick up ammo constantly. You pick up a lot of stuff. You pick up lots of healing items all around. There's healing items and stuff. You can generally take a few good hits before you'll need to heal. Uh, Probably damage output is higher on the higher difficulties and whatnot. Um, but there's a lot of key item stuff too. There's like a lot of just like really finding keys and like finding little items that you use to do a thing. A lot like Resident Evil or any of those other kind of explorative games like that. And you got to find out like, oh, I should use this thing over here. This is where I need to use this thing, kind of thing. So I like that. I like the explorative elements of trying to figure out where to use everything and this and that. There's puzzles in the game too, which some of them are kind of hard to do without a guide, but there's hints for them all in the game. It's just like if you know what those hints mean or not. Like there's a piano puzzle that I could never do without just watching a video of it, because I don't know notes on a piano. I don't know what each key is, you know. But if you knew that, then you'd just be able to understand the hint, and that would work for you. Um, yeah, lots of cool stuff like that. Little button puzzles and lots of cool stuff. So lots of good puzzles. I like all that. The gameplay all comes together to make a really good experience, and it blends together well with the atmosphere and the music and the story and all that. Everything comes together to make one really solid and nice horror package that is just really tense and will scare the shit out of you, and has just the deepest atmosphere is really what it is down to. And there's some good jump scare gags too, but a lot of it is just the fear of the unknown, I suppose. So yeah. And really the other thing is a lot of the weapons, like the shotgun and stuff, are totally missable. The shotgun is just in like a random fucking bathroom in the elementary school there, that you like don't even have to go to. And also the hunting rifle is like in this one boss fight, but if you don't see it like I didn't, you'll miss it and you just don't have it for the rest of the game. So that's interesting. Like I said, you can miss most of the melee weapons too. You can't miss the pistol because they like give that to you in a cutscene. Sybil gives it to you, so that's like the one that you actually would have to have. But I'm sure there's a pistol only or like just like run through kind of runs, where you like only would have to kill the bosses or something like that. Minimal, pacifist runs or whatnot, of the game. So, but yeah, like overall, it's just like a really solid game. Um, Solid. No, I mean it's a masterpiece to me. I think the only thing that could like maybe even be contested is like the tank controls, but like I got used to that, and I think that's fine. You know what? I didn't even really talk about. There's two sewer sections in the game where the radio just like stops working, and there's like these lizard things that you like can only hear them like pitter pattering towards you, and some of them you can't even hear. Some of them just like drop down from the ceiling, or they're like hanging down there, just come at you like that. So that's pretty cool. Just thought I'd mention that. That's another kind of scary part of the game there. But there's also really not that many parts of the game that like really drag, and the game is only like 5 hours long, like I said, or like maybe 10 if you haven't played it before, and that's really stretching it out. Maybe like 7, I would say. It depends on how long you spend on all the puzzles and whatnot. How long you explore and all that. So, yeah. But I really like it. I really think that the atmosphere, because of the graphical stuff and the fog, I think is such a great gimmick. The music really helps sell the mood, and just the sound effects, I think, is really what it is. I don't know if I mentioned that really at all, but like sometimes there'll just be the craziest little sound effects, and there's little subtle stuff in the sound design, which is really cool. Just everything about the sound is like super excellent. Really well done stuff there. And alongside the gameplay and the explorative elements and the story, which I really like, I think that the game just comes together as a nearly flawless experience. And to me, whatever minor flaws that I would have with the game don't really detract from it at all for me. So, to me, the game is a masterpiece, and I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. It's definitely one of the best games. I definitely put it really high on that list of top video games, if I remember correctly. It's nice that I could just keep referring back to this list because like every time I'm like, hey, you know what? I had it on that top list somewhere, but I think it's my favorite horror game if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's number 21 on the list, and it beats out all of the other horror games. Yes, this definitely still is my favorite horror game. And I knew that. I knew that going in. Like, this is definitely the best one. Also, I mean, it's the one that's the scariest to me still anyway, so it's like, horror-wise, it's just really great. Listen to this shit. This is from the final boss. This is like the noise the final boss makes. Like, it's ridiculous. But it's tense. It's scary. I mean, the final boss is kind of scary. But yeah, so and I'm anxious to get to the other games, but it probably won't happen until next Halloween or whatever. Oh yeah, it's October, by the way. It's totally October. Anyway, so but this is really distracting. But anyway, so I'm gonna say it right now that I still think that I like this game. And I don't think the other games are really gonna change my mind. But I played 2, and I beat 2 back in the day. I got the bad ending back in the day, but I've also played 3 and played a lot of that. They're just not as scary to me, but I do appreciate them. I think that they're fine. I'm really anxious to go back to them and kind of see how my if my experience now that I've kind of matured as a gamer would be different, and that I would really enjoy those games a lot more now. I'm excited to go into those, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, we'll get to those at some point. Anyways, until next time, this has been JZNES saying keep it classic. Stick around for more reviews on underrated games. We'll see you guys in the next one. JZ out.